when I was talking to a federal prisoner a little while ago, he says, I reserve my rights, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, prejudice, whatever. I said, why do you say that every time you talk to me? He says, well, because they're listening to me to a federal penitentiary. I said, they who, Bob? He said, well, they might use this against me. I said, how could they use what you're saying against you? I said, well, stop being afraid of this day. If somebody wants to say that you said something and try to use it against you, you call the man out. You say, Bob, there's something I say to this other man named Karl, up in Virginia, who's trying to aid and assist his fellow man while he's in a federal penitentiary. Did this cause you some harm, Bob? He's like, well, no, the United States, we don't like when you say, the United States what? Oh, the United States Susie? Is that the United States two names? Is that a first name, last name? What's the United States? So like I said, you folks, like I said, I just look at things a whole lot different. You guys, I know, like I said, the government is so low down in my totem pole of things to worry about every day. Because, like I said, once they call you out for some reason, a prosecutor or whoever, say, is your name Bob? Yeah. Did I do something to you, Bob? No. Then who did I do it to? Well, the United States. Can you show actually tangible, can you actually show some damage? Can you actually show some damage that I actually caused the United States? Can you actually show me? Dollars and cents. Can you show me? No. So then you're just guessing that because what I'm saying or what I'm doing is causing injury or harm or loss. You can't actually prove anything, can you?
I want to be able to contact you. I have a couple things I'd like to talk to you about. One, I had talked to Bali back a little while ago about the Onondaga, my Indian friends up here. Actually, you can see it on YouTube where the state police came onto their properties and started pounding on them with the billy clubs. And this has been 17 years. They've been wanting to go to court, and the attorneys and stuff want them to settle. They don't want to settle. They just basically the court or the state wants to give them chump change, and just to try to get rid of this thing, but they want to go to trial. So I kind of like to talk to you about that if you'd be interested in helping them out. This basically, their father was murdered by the nation because he was contesting the chiefs that were supposedly supposed to be traditional chiefs sitting on their council, but they're BIA basically agents. There's a difference when in 71 when the BIA started registering tribal nations. I just realized they basically became Federal Reserve Indians or nation tribes, and because of the registering, what it goes back to that they've changed the names on the federal registry, so they're not recognized as the traditional by treaties. So anyways, I'd like to talk to you about them, and I have another question also maybe privately about statute of limitations of your concepts of statute of limitations of time for perhaps pursuing like not small claims, but some sort of different claims of the statute of limitations.
There's a statute of limitation is for a statute. It's so something rigid. It's not for man. Man isn't bound by statutes. You know that, right? You know man is fluid and dynamic.
Right.
He's not bound. If you want to find an easy one to just study, just do the Judiciary Act of 1793, Clause 31, Section 31. And it'll say that what was going on way back when is, let's say, like some lord or some knight or some duke. He had a good-looking wife, whatever, and the king would take his wife and make a claim that the duke was doing all kinds of nonsense. And then they found out later, as history went by, that the duke was actually innocent, or the knight or the lord was actually innocent. And he was stripped of all his land and property and everything, his titles. And his kids would actually find out the truth after the dad was dead. And or the grandkids would come back and they'd say, we want all the establishment of our property. We want it, the restored back to what it was, because it was taken away by fraud 100, 200, 300 years ago for whatever reason, that the king just felt like doing it. So like I said, that's an easy one. That's one that I looked at a long time ago.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I had talked to Bali about that. My surname ancestor was one of the last to be burned at the stake and by King James, and in England for heresy, and then his children ended up coming over and helping Roger Williams establish Rhode Island. So that would kind of like to do a claim on that. And that was actually 1612. He was burned at the stake in England. But I'm gonna let you go. You got my email in the packet I sent you. If you could shoot me up an email, that way I can get a hold of you. I appreciate that. We could talk about the Indian thing here then.
Like I said, you just write to me on the on my email. Just write India on the subject line. That's all. Okay. And like I said to people a lot of times when they come up with these. I was trying to do that last week with somebody talking about treaties and all kinds of titles and nobility. I was like, you have to find actually that, you know, who's had the chain of custody of this paperwork. You know, you better hope that, you know, it's been locked in the Vatican somewhere. You know, someplace that somebody has, you know, somebody had they can't counterfeit it, they can't forge it, they can't say that they can't dispute it. You know, so the same thing happened with the O.J. Simpson case. And that's how O.J. Simpson was basically throwing all that DNA samples against him out because they kept saying who had the chain of custody. How did the DNA sample go from the time it was found in his bathroom? You know, the kid's brain was found in his back pocket. You know, how did it wind up, you know, in the courtroom today? What was the chain of custody? And the chain of custody is a great, huge factor when it comes to evidence that the state or anybody wants to try to move against you. Has it been tampered with? Has it been mutilated? Has it been added? Has it been something been removed? So, like I said, if you're coming up with all these treaties and all this other stuff, like I said, people try to say, well, let's check how old the paper is. Let's see the ink on the paper. Let's see if this ink was even available 200-300 years ago.
Well, like we don't even know whether these treaties were done. The bigger question is whether these treaties were done under duress.
Well, like I said, the big thing is the chain of custody. Where are these ancient paperworks? Where have they been housed? Where have they been held?
Right.
And like obviously, even if your great grandparent was, you know, given the state of Rhode Island, you know, how did it slip out of his hands? You know, how did he lose it? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, did he lose it was he on a riverboat gambling and he just said, hey, I'll put it all in, and he put it all in? You know, like I said, there might be a lot more to this. So like I said, I usually don't worry too much about this kind of stuff unless you can show the chain of custody and how the possession transferred, you know, the possession of property transferred from one to another. If it's based on forgery or, like you said, duress or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you an email and I'll address it on Onondaga Nation of Indians then on the subject line.
Yeah. Because like I said too, because even if that happened to your great grandparent, what are you going to claim as damages to you? What are you going to say that, you know, how has it infected your life? How has it impacted your life? You see what I'm saying? Then it's all conjecturing. Yeah. Like, well, I'd be as rich as Donald Trump. I'd be a billionaire. I'd own half the world. It's like, okay, well, what happened to the guy, you know, who owned Virginia?
We would never know. I mean, that's you know, how would you possibly ever know? But on something like that, you know, that's the same thing I've heard on NPR just the other day. The lawyer that takes care of all the claims or all the money issues that having to do with 9/11 and the oil thing and all these different big things are now with the GM thing and the damages and stuff like that and you know how they settle out how they determine how they're going to settle for the amounts of damages and that type of stuff and how they come up with that type of thing. But you never know, you never know what that person who passed away, what future, you know.
That's what I say to people all the time. You guys got to be careful. I see people putting in ridiculous dollar amounts for claims. And like I said, when 9/11 hit, even Oklahoma, when that happened, the parents are getting between $5,000 and like $15,000 for each child that they lost. And in world, I think they were getting between $10 and $25 for each child that was lost. So when people are putting in, you know, $1 million claims because they got a parking ticket, I just laugh.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, so
I'm going to let you go so somebody else can get on. And besides, I know you want to get that nice juicy burger, that Angus burger.
I already ate it. No, I got a Trimmins burger. Trimmins is better, man. Trimmins is just all the leavings.
But I've been sitting here.
Trims?
I was sitting here picking my banjo on my lap while, and all of a sudden I hear you're unmuted. I'm like, oh shit, I got to pick some. All right, we'll let you go.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye. Ann.
Bye. Okay, next in line is East Virginia. Go ahead, East Virginia. You've been unmuted.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, good. I didn't know it was the next one. Hi.
Yes, you were. Hi.
Karl, I have a question about, well, it's family stuff, but right now it's about, I'm in Virginia also, and I heard today on one of your early talk shows that when the thing happened with your son, you really wanted to get your son back to the commonwealth state, a commonwealth, and not just to a state. And I've always wondered, what is the difference of Virginia being commonwealth state?
Well, honestly, commonwealth is more, you could say it's, most people wouldn't like that concept of commonwealth. Like I say to folks years ago when we first came down here, if they do it for the common well-being of the people. So like I said, in states, say it's more like communal. It's more like a communist. It's more, you actually say people don't have what you'd say as many rights guarded or guaranteed or protected in the Commonwealth. It's like if a cop decided to sit in my bed at 3:17 in the morning, start asking me questions, he basically can. He doesn't really need a warrant. He doesn't need anything. He's basically doing it for the common good. So it's a little more. You better behave in one of these states. You better behave in the Commonwealth, or you're going to wish you didn't live here. So like I said, it's just justice is swift and incredibly quick here. If you have a warrant on if you have a warrant on a debt, they are going to move against you like lightning.
Okay, well, I have a daughter that's incarcerated there.
Yeah. So this is Darlene here.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that you were telling me, your daughter was incarcerated. And like I said, it's a great state to kind of live in like that if you behave. But if you don't behave, they're going to move on you like lightning. They're going to say they're doing it for your own good. It's kind of weird like that. It's like a mommy kind of state.
So. Yeah, we've been kind of being batted around for a few years with probation violation, and I was so confused when it started as to I knew nothing about the common law, and I certainly wish I had known. Now she's in it so deep, I don't know. What is your suggestion or opinion about her writing her letter of mistake and me putting in a claim for my property? It's no violence, it's no theft, it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
I
mean, I understand that you're trying to get her out, and she was the lady who was in there for drugs.
Well, yeah, but that's 18 years old, and now she's 23, and it's just been a slippery slope of probation violations. It's very difficult there, Karl.
All it is it's like I say, it's the mommy state, the nanny state. That's all it is. If you can't, and that's what I try to tell people all the time. If you don't know how to move through the courts, all it is once you leave home at 18 and mom couldn't control you, mom couldn't tell you to stop doing drugs, and mom couldn't tell you not to drink and drive, well, the mommy state is going to step in and take over where your mom didn't teach you. And since
couldn't she go in there and say she wants her property restored?
Yeah, she can go in there for the restoration of her property. And like I said, once she gets out and then her property goes out and hurts somebody or injures somebody, she's liable, just like if it's a dog and the dog bites somebody.
Well, she's taking responsibility, Karl.
No. I'm saying you claim that it's your property. You claim that's your dog, and your dog comes out, and the dog is rabied and all this other stuff, and the dog is majorly malfunctioning, and you ask if your property be the restoration, and you let it loose back out into society, and it kills somebody, are you going to bear liability?
Well, that's pretty. It's a lot of variables there that you're talking about. We can't control. You get on an airplane, you crash. You can hurt somebody that way too.
That's why court and penitentiaries are a nanny state. That's all they
Yeah,
are.
but if she's willing to take the responsibility or the liability, let's say.
A daycare center.
Huh?
You're a daycare center. Ask, why don't you write to the Secretary of State and say that my property is incarcerated. I'd like my property, the immediate release of my property. What kind of bond would you require for me to release my property back into the public at large?
Thank you.
Yeah. And so what about her? Should she write a letter of mistake or not even go that route?
Well, if you're claiming your property, you're taking control of the situation. She's now the subordinate or the child in the matter, right, Carl?
Yeah, she's incompetent. Like she's febrile or she's in a wheelchair or medically, whatever, induced into a coma, whatever. She can't function in society without you. But then you're going to bear liability if you let her out into the public at large.
If she does something wrong. I mean, if she doesn't do anything wrong, I mean...
They're going to want something. They want to want something like just like if you let that kid loose in my house, I'm going to say, "Oh, you're going to let that kid loose in my house, huh? On my property? You're going to have to put up a hell of a down payment before you let that kid walk around and drive around my property. She run over a cow, then what happens? Who's going to pay for it?
All right. Well,
That's what I would do. I'd write to the Secretary.
So wait a minute. So she has to ask herself. You have to, Darlene, you have to sit down and ask yourself, do I want to take, responsibility for my daughter and because you want, it sounds like you want to get her out and, so.
Well, I've just seen how crazy, it's like Carl was saying, it is a mommy state there. And once you get in the first slight bit of trouble and it's, for something so minor.
Can I ask you, what did she do?
It was a little bit of marijuana and an ecstasy pill that she took a charge at 18, and it turned into a felony. And then it was probation, and drug messages. It was a nightmare, and so it caused her a lot of stress to the point that she felt already stigmatized and demoralized from being a felon at such a young age, and she felt there's just hardly any chance for her anyway, and it just went from bad to worse. And we've
it's a felony? Marijuana and ecstasy?
Well, one ecstasy pill is a felony.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have mandatory sentencing for no matter what amount you have on you.
Really? Wow. So Carl, what do you think about that? Is that like, as long as your daughter doesn't go out and do any more ecstasy, I suppose. What do you think? Is that big a liability?
She's accepted into a 2-year rehab in North Carolina that is self-funded, and where they learn to work and to be in society. They're not learning life skills where she's at. She's in Goochland, Carl. She's near your farm. And when I go to visit her, I wanted to barge into your farm and sit down and talk to you face to face. Because this goes pretty deep for me into what I see as a society problem and epidemic with the way these young ones are being labeled so young, they don't feel like they have a chance in life.
What I'm saying, if you release, what I'm saying, if you just let them loose into society, who's going to bear liability?
Well, yes, I understand that. Well, that goes deep for me. I think that we, as creators, born under the Creator, we all pretty much set our own destiny. So if it's not someone's destiny to be in hit by a car by a drunk driver, they're not going to be hit by a car by a drunk driver. That's the way I believe.
Yeah, so maybe she'll learn a lesson from all this and come out, on top and stronger and better.
And she will go for a 2-year program that she's already been accepted in.
Okay. So how much longer is she going? Is she in jail?
She's in prison.
For how long?
3 years and 9 months.
For an ecstasy pill?
In the beginning, that's what it was, Angela, and then it just escalated. You do one little thing wrong. Like they came to our house one day.
They violated her probation for what reason did she? What was the violation?
She didn't show up for a probation meeting, and they put a warrant out for your arrest when you don't go for your meeting. And it's you jump through so many hoops when you're so young and you don't have a license anymore, and you got to rely on your mommy to drive you around. I mean, it's crazy. I had no family there to help us. No father was helping. I mean, it was just really difficult time, and I stood right beside her this whole time, knowing that I could see her going into a stressed, depressed state.
You know what you need to do is you need to come to terms with the whole thing, and if you want to take responsibility for your daughter, go ahead and do what Karl said, and write to who did you say? Karl, the
Secretary of State.
Yeah, and go ahead and tell them your daughter's been kidnapped and you want your property restored and go that route. Otherwise, you know what? 3 years goes by really quick. She might learn something from it. I don't know. I hate to think of anybody cooling their heels in the slammer. But why didn't she show up? I mean, there's a reason why she didn't show up for her.
Well, not so much.
Go ahead, Karl.
I'm saying not so much that her property was kidnapped. It's like it's not so much that. It's not so much that her property was kidnapped. It's her property. Her property didn't know how to conduct itself properly. Within in a
we didn't understand. It was a system we did not understand. It was basically what it was, Karl. It was so confusing, and we didn't know legalese, and we didn't know, and it was crazy. It was putting me under intense stress. And, financial.
Yeah, all I'm trying to say is when you go to the Secretary of State, you're just saying to the Secretary of State, it's like, I'd like the restoration of my property. I want to bear full liability of the release of my property. What is going to be requirement of me? What kind of bond do you need? What do you need of me to get the restoration of my property, immediately in my possession? Yeah. What are you going to require me to do?
That's what you should do. Otherwise, unfortunately,
it's say like you said, that she got accepted into a 2-year program. It's a victimless crime. There's been no harm or injury to man. She is self-inflicted. Blah blah blah.
There you go. Sounds like a winner to me, Karl.
Yeah, just something simple. Just make it simple.